Hi there, my name's Ed. I'm a little bit of a tea head, and I'm just going to explain a little bit about the difference between Gong Fu brewing and Western brewing. So I'm quite interested in Chinese tea, specifically brewing it Gong Fu style. And this is a little bit of a weird passion or obsession. So I just wanted to make a video talking a little bit about that. So my first question to you is, what do you think of when I say tea? You probably think of Britain. You probably think of tea bags, and yeah, that's probably what comes to your mind. We have a very ingrained idea that Britain has a very sort of sustained or established tea culture, but actually, China outdates Britain's tea culture by thousands of years. Some people say sort of 2000, others say tea dates back as early as 6,000 years, and Britain only has maybe 100 or 200 years on the tea train. So, Chinese tea is by far the oldest sort of tea culture, and therefore I think it's one of the richest, more developed and more interesting tea cultures in the world compared to British or Western tea culture. So to compare quickly about the difference between the way that Western style brewing goes on and the way that sort of traditional Gongfu style Chinese brewing is, there's a few little differences. So firstly, Chinese tea is done with loose leaf. So this is actually sort of whole tea leaves. You can still make out the sort of the veins of the leaf a lot of the times. Obviously you can kind of tell the structure, you can see the stems, and you can even tell which sort of type of leaf it is. So sometimes you get buds. So I can see a bud here. That's a bud. And then you get sort of longer leaves as well. So you can actually see in your tea, sort of literally the tea leaf. And that's so fascinating, and you see it change and kind of, yeah, they sort of can be so different. So here you can actually see there's a bud in the middle and there's two leaves there, which I think is quite interesting. You can actually sort of really get a lot of detail about the tea and a lot of information about the tea from your actual product, as opposed to a tea bag where it's just dust. It's like just, you know, kind of mashed up, and you can't tell anything really from the tea, apart from maybe its colour. But again, that's a little bit difficult. So, and also, as you can see here, there's quite a lot of tea. So Gongfu brewing uses a lot more tea leaf than other styles like Western brewing. And the reason that is because Western style, we brew tea for longer. Gongfu style, you brew tea for quite a short amount of time. And what that allows you to do is have more infusions of the tea. So with a tea bag, you might brew it once, and then you're done with it. While with leaves, you can actually keep pouring water over them. This is a pu'er tea, which you can probably brew upwards of 10 times. So you really get to sort of have a lot of tea from the tea leaves. And as a consequence of this, because you're using loose leaf, because you're brewing it more times, there's a difference in just the physical way that you brew the tea. So with Chinese tea, you need teaware. So here I've got a Yixing clay pot, supposedly handmade. I got it from China, so I'm not entirely sure whether it's handmade. So this is obviously for brewing the tea. And this is what's called a gongdao bay, or a fairness cup. So because when you're pouring the tea, and you could be pouring for guests, and also you use sort of smaller cups, so you kind of need a transition vessel, if that makes sense. Because if you're pouring, the beginning is much weaker than the end of the pour. So yeah, it just makes it a little bit easier to, you know, sort of experience your tea. And also, as I just said, smaller cups. Here I've got a little fish in my cup, but yeah. So this is, I think this is a tradition really based in trying to taste the tea rather than just drink lots of it. So in the West we have massive cups or mugs to drink our tea. But here you just want to take, you're taking sort of smaller sips and really focusing more on the tea rather than just, getting it into you. So you may be asking, why do this? Just because it's tradition doesn't mean that it's necessarily like good or interesting or whatever. So there's a few reasons. So Gong Fu brewing, you get a much richer sort of tea taste and experience because you're using the actual leaves, which they can be quite sort of potent compared to just dust, and also because you're using a lot more, you get a lot more extraction from your infusions. Now, as a consequence of this, you start to see something which you totally don't, or you kind of to an extent totally don't get with Western brewing. So in tea, there's actually loads of different really exciting chemicals, some of which have psychoactive effects, and there's also lots of minerality in different chemicals and all sorts of kind of almost mysterious things in the tea, because nobody really understands exactly what's going on in a tea leaf. But what this actually does is it makes it have more of an effect on your body. So the first of those effects could be the effect of in your mouth. So because the tea has certain minerals and certain characteristics, when you drink the tea, your mouth actually reacts to the physical tea. So, but because it might deposit some minerals, your mouth might start salivating, or it might start tingling. You might get sort of an experience of bitterness that turns into sweetness, which is called huigan in Chinese. So there's loads of sort of interesting things that can actually happen literally in the physical kind of space of your mouth, which is a really sort of core component of Chinese tea. Another thing is the experience on your body. So I talked about how there's psychoactive chemicals in tea. Now you probably don't know this, but Chinese tea, or tea in general, can actually make you a little bit drunk, sort of tea drunk. Obviously it's not the same drunkenness as alcohol. But people, very frequently report a sort of high feeling, and these highs can change between different types of tea and the different type of chemicals that are in the tea. So yeah, that's a kind of an interesting element. You actually get high or drunk when you drink tea, and when you drink lots of it. Another interesting thing is because you're using the whole leaves, although you're going to get a much stronger and richer tea, you're actually extracting the tea much more slowly than you would with a tea bag, because in a tea bag you have lots of particles and lots of little pieces. You can get the hot water over all of those and just extract them immediately almost. With a leaf, it takes time for the water to kind of get into the leaf and to heat up, and you slowly over each infusion extract sort of basically extract the tea. And what that means is, as you have more brews or more infusions of the tea, it actually changes. So your first infusion might be different from the second, or they change each time. But the tea that you're having on infusion 1 can be very different from the tea that you're having on infusion 5 or 10. So that's kind of an interesting element where you kind of are almost on a journey. When you're tasting tea, you're on a journey with the different kind of experiences and tastes, and there you can kind of explore how it changes. And also because you're brewing in a Gong Fu style, it actually affords you sort of more control over how you're brewing tea. So in a tea bag, you extract all the tea very quickly, and what that means is that in tea you have sort of bitter chemicals. You have all sorts of different flavors and tastes and minerals and chemicals. And if you're brewing everything out immediately, you're going to get everything. So you're going to get the good and the bad. So what you can actually do is kind of, especially with, let's say, green teas, but all teas in general, is you can get a kind of astringent bitter taste if you brew it for too long, or you brew it sort of too hot. So what this really does is allows you to kind of get the the kind of the nicer tasting parts of the tea, and in a kind of really rich way, but you don't get kind of the bitterness and the astringency. So that's why. Also, another thing is that you don't actually put any. We're very used to tea having milk and sugar, or just milk, or just whatever. I've just been in Kenya where they put loads of milk and loads of sugar in tea. But with Chinese tea, you don't put anything in. And that's because the tea itself is just good enough on its own. So yeah, you kind of just drink the pure tea liquor, as it's called. So how do we do this is the question. So what I'm going to just quickly do is go through kind of a few of the steps behind Gong Fu brewing. So the first thing you do, I've got a kettle over here with lots of water. The first thing you do is warm your teaware. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of water in my clay pot just to warm it up. So with all different teas, you're really focused on, or you can really control how hot you want the water and how long you brew it for. So this is a pu'er tea, and pu'er teas you want to brew really hot. So that's why you warm the teaware, just so you can control much better how hot your tea is. So you don't want that water cooling down as soon as you put it in the pot. So yeah, let's just get that in. Cool. And what this allows you to do, first and foremost, is be able to smell the tea. So the dry leaf on its own isn't very fragrant. It's quite hard to smell. Just dropped a little bit there. But if you put it in a nice hot sort of vessel, it's a little bit easier to smell. So I'm just going to give this a little smell. Yeah, let's get this. This is where it gets a bit nerdy. Interesting. So I won't say anything about this tea in particular. Tea tasting can appear to be quite pretentious, and it probably is. It's quite similar to wine. But I think the important thing with tea tasting is not how a tea tastes, but how it tastes to you, and how you experience the tea. So it doesn't really matter what other people say. So I'm not going to say what I think about this tea. It's just a pu'er tea that I got from a friend. But there's all sorts of descriptors for the way tea tastes. You can get floral sort of teas, you can get more fruity or vegetal, you can get woody and nutty teas, and you can get creamy and kind of all sorts of things. So tea is really varied. And just to say a word about tea itself, while I continue with this Gongfu session, what I will say quickly, the next thing you do is you rinse the tea. So what you're kind of aiming to do is get rid of the kind of dirt, potentially, or the sort of some kind of whatever impurities that are just on the outside of the leaf. Right, let me get rid of this. So it's just to make sure, especially with like a pu'er is an aged tea, so sometimes you can get sort of a few kind of just basically impurities, stuff that you don't want to be drinking. There we go. So that's the rinse. So what I will just quickly talk about is the different types of tea. So I consider there to be sort of 5 main types of tea. There's white tea, green tea, oolong tea, black tea, and pu'er tea. Now, this breaks down a little bit more. There's also yellow tea, which is quite uncommon, which I don't really consider to be like a main class of tea. And then this also breaks down, so oolongs, you can have like a really wide range of oolongs. You can have kind of light oolongs and dark oolongs. And pu'er tea, you can have raw pu'er and ripe pu'er. So yeah, there's actually loads of different varieties of tea. Another difference between the West and Chinese tea is in the West we only have black tea, maybe green tea as well. But tea itself is almost always black. But actually black tea in terms of like production, is quite almost one of the rarest or least produced teas in China. So it's, yeah, there's very different types of tea. So what I'm going to do here, this is a bit of an interesting thing. So I just rinse the tea, just with hot water to get rid of any impurities or dirt, and also to open up the leaf just to get it started, to start the infusions. I'm pouring that rinse back over the clay pot. So the reason we do this is it develops something called a patina on the clay pot. So the tea has some sort of essential oils and, as I said before, lots of different chemicals. And by pouring it over the pot, you deposit some of those oils and some of those chemicals onto the teapot. So over time, you kind of build up layers and layers and layers of these deposits, and over time you'll get kind of a more shiny teapot, which can kind of be again a kind of sign of your kind of tea journey and tea appreciation. And also with Yixing clay, is the more times that you brew in the clay, because it's porous, you deposit layers and layers of the chemicals and the minerals in the tea. So over time you kind of season the teapot. So inside you're actually going to get a kind of deposit of flavour almost. But that happens over many sort of infusions. So what I'm going to just go ahead and do is have the first infusion. So what you'll notice is the brewing time is very, very short. This is just a tea strainer, just to get rid of any particles. Some people don't use tea strainers at all, and they just sort of, go ahead and drink the stuff. But yeah, here we go. So like another valuable thing I think that comes with tea tasting is allowing yourself just to be without distraction, just to kind of be with yourself and be with the tea. Our daily lives usually tend to be quite surrounded by screens and social media and all sorts of stuff. We tend to be quite impulsive and totally distracted almost all the time. But with tea, you just have to sit down and drink some tea. Basically, that's what you have to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and have a little drink. Yes, I'm already starting to feel, as soon as that tea enters your mouth, you start to get a reaction in your mouth. So I can kind of feel it in my cheeks and in my tongue. Another thing maybe to note is different elements of tea tasting. So different teas can be sort of can kind of feel kind of physically different in your mouth, and also have that different reaction as well. But also, the kind of aroma, the taste, the colour of the liquor, the tea liquor is different. There's all sorts of other sort of different things that you can look at when it comes to, or a kind of experience when it comes to tea. So I've just been sitting here brewing this tea. I'm probably on the 5th infusion by now. But what I thought might be quite interesting is to look at how the tea leaf has changed after it's been brewed a few times. So what I've just found here is, well, as you brew the tea leaf kind of opens up and actually changes colour as well. So what you can see here is actually a full leaf, totally intact. So this has come all the way from China. I think it's from the Sichuan region. And it's just fascinating to me that, you know, these teas tend to be tea trees tend to be quite old, because this is a pu'er tea. I've got no idea how old actually. But this is usually, you know, this could be a tea leaf from an old tea tree all the way in China, and it's been processed and aged, and it's still intact. It's still intact in my teapot as I'm literally brewing it. So yeah, that's just another wonderful element of tea tasting. So with that concludes this video. I just want to say a couple of things. I'm by no means a tea expert. I've only been interested in tea for a few months, so I'm probably considered a bit of an amateur. But I just wanted to sort of spread my knowledge, and I would really recommend that you give it a go if you'd like. I would like just to shout out Mayleaf and Don May in particular. I stumbled upon one of his videos a few months ago, and I mean, the rest is history, as you can see. Yeah, so I just credit, I mean, the majority of my knowledge to him, and for starting this whole passion in tea. So yeah, I hope that you get bitten by the tea bug, and I'll be making more videos about tea in the near future. So if you are interested in tea, please subscribe, because you'll be seeing a little bit more about tea. See you later.